Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everybody. There are more people joining, so I'm going to have to let them in as they come along. So hopefully that won't disturb us too much. But thank you for coming along today. I know that the reason you're here is there's something connected with you when you saw the invitation to join me today. So I really want to welcome you. Today I'm going to tell you all about what happened for me and how this whole Delphi Cave Experience came about. You've probably seen a version of it, maybe on YouTube or on the socials, but today you're going to get the unplugged version, the complete version that I won't release publicly because you're here and because you're interested. And I think the reason I need to share these details with you is because if you're going to make an important decision, you need to know exactly what it's all about and if it really truly connects with you and what you're seeking right now. And then I'm going to tell the story about the 2025 experience when I actually returned to the Delphi Cave with a group of 8 and the literal life-changing transformations that was witnessed and experienced in that journey. And then I'm going to give you a special invitation and I guess something that I've put together exclusively for you because you're here today. Because I know you're here today, it takes commitment to be here, and I want to reward that for those of you that this really resonates with. And you'll get a sense for that today. So I just want to check before we get started in the chat box, if you wouldn't mind just tapping in your first name and where you're actually connecting from, so I get an idea of who's in the room today. That would be awesome. So for me, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm in Brisbane, Australia. And I can see that Robert's here and I know he's in Brisbane. I'd love to get a sense of where you are coming in from today. So let's have a look at the chat box. Okay. Why can't I see it? Oh, here we go. Okay, Laura from San Diego. I was there last November. I loved San Diego. Sarah for South California, I haven't been there yet. Kate, Canada, lovely. Welcome. Jill from New York, I love New York. Karen, Indianapolis. And Robert, of course, lovely. Robert, welcome. Welcome. And we've got other people joining and I'll just admit them as we go. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get right into this because I'm so excited. And as I said, I really want to just tell you my full story. And if you've got questions, pop them in the chat box. Otherwise, I will get to them at the end. So how did this all start? Like, I'm not a cave person. It was 2024. Actually, it all started 23. I had been experiencing what was supposed to be an incurable neurological disorder that essentially prevented me from even working for 2 years. It was pretty serious. And the right side of my body, every nerve on the right side of the body was just in constant pain. And that was all a result of a surgery that I had in my head in 2010. And obviously the scar tissue over time was growing and, connecting in on the nerve system that was affecting the right side of the body. It was debilitating. I couldn't drive anymore. It really changed the nature of my life. Once where I was really very social and seeing people and getting out and about, and it really crushed my sense of confidence and ability to do things and to function in life in a normal kind of way. So I started seeing specialists and natural therapists and you name it, I probably went and saw these people and I was open to everything. I think you may know some of my story. I've had cancer twice. I was given 6 months to live the first time. I'm still here. Part of that is attributed to an incredible will that I have that I didn't know existed until I was tested. And then I went on to study neuroscience. So I've got my master's in neuroscience. And I can almost explain anything from a neuroscience perspective. Like I really delved into that. And I realized that when you understand the science behind things, you're less resistant to trying different approaches. And more importantly, you can transform fear into a sense of faith, right? Because there is some science that underpins a lot of what we think, how we think, and how patterns of behavior just kind of get stuck in our everyday processes without our conscious awareness. So I'm a bit of an expert in helping people to transform their thinking and their lives, essentially. But going back to my story, I had gone to see this neurologist for about 12 months, and we tried every trial drug on the market, and I was open to at least trying everything. Some of them had very horrible side effects, and they obviously didn't work at all. And then there was a new method of treating these pain disorders with something called ketamine. And I did my research. It sounded a bit scary, but they were having incredible success. So I went into hospital. They did some ketamine treatment for a week, and it was incredibly successful for 6 months. So I actually went out into the world and I was able to function reasonably normally again for 6 months. And I felt, wow, I've got my life back. And then 6 months later, the symptoms all came back again. So when I went back to the doctor, he said, look, you can have a repeat dosage. We will probably start you on a slightly higher dosage this time because your body's already had this experience. So I went in trusting in full faith that because it worked the first time, it was going to work the second time. So I was really excited. However, the second time, this is post-COVID, and the protocols in the hospital were very different. So they weren't monitoring the effect of the increased dose on my body as closely as they needed to. And even though I was complaining of pain, my liver and all the rest of it, long story short, my liver was significantly damaged. I had an out-of-body experience. I flatlined again. So I've had 3 near-death experiences. And this time I was given a vision where I was able to experience what it was like to actually be completely unconscious in a hospital bed, yet be completely awake in this in-between state where I saw this beautiful golden grid coming out of my body and this white light coming into the room. And I kind of interfered and said, wait, am I dying here? And I said, I need to say goodbye. And somehow an aspect of my conscious awareness was able to leave that hospital room, find my father in the garden interstate and say goodbye. My mother was in the kitchen, my brother was driving, my sister was at her home, and my 2 children were on the Gold Coast. And then I was saying goodbye, came back. I said, okay, I'm ready. You can take me now. And then this other voice rose and said, not so fast. It's not you that gets to decide, it's me. And I was like, what's this voice? And I realized for the first time that the body, the vehicle that we are in for this life, has a voice. And it tries to get our attention from time to time with, pains, fevers, all sorts of things. And if we don't pay attention to that form of communication, then it will get our attention. So long story short, I did a deal and said, please give me one more chance. I will never, ever take this vehicle for granted. So I ended up going back home, and I had a series of dreams over 4 consecutive nights. And each night I dreamt of this cave. And it was waking me up, and it was so vivid. And it was like I could feel myself literally in this cave. And I'd never dreamt of caves before. And on the 4th night, I woke up in the middle of the dream and I said, where is this cave? Not expecting an answer, right? And the answer came, and it said Delphi. And I thought in my mind, I've heard of the Oracle of Delphi, but I didn't know much else about it really. So the next morning I got up and I went to my computer and I typed in, where is Delphi? And I realized where it was. I went, right, I'm booking a ticket. I'm going to find this cave in Delphi. There was something that gripped me that I couldn't ignore. And it didn't make any logical sense. I wasn't operating from the brain. There was something much deeper within me calling me to go to find this cave. I never once questioned anything about it. So I booked a ticket, went to Delphi. I got there, and I don't know how many of you have been to Delphi. Can you put your hand up and let me know? Have you been to Delphi before? Yeah? Okay, one. Okay, yeah. Well, it's the most amazing, beautiful little town. It's like a ski village, but it's only small. And people generally only go there for, oh, how do I put my hand down? I don't know how to put my hand, lower my hand, there it goes. And people only really go there for one day, maybe two, because it's only little, and they go to the Temple of Apollo and they go and see the museum and they have a look at where the oracle operated from, and they might go to the Temple of Athena, but then they leave because there's no reason to be there. But the second I arrived in Delphi, the energy of the place kind of went, you're going to hang around. You know, there was something there that I was connecting with. Now, I'm not woo-woo, but I do have a very strong faith, you know, and I know that I am more than this physical body. And if you look at what Einstein and Tesla were telling us, that if you want to understand the nature of the universe, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And all of a sudden, I was actually tuning into the energy, frequency, and vibration of the place. But there was something really profound starting to shift. And I was just being really present and really excited about this energy that I was feeling in my body that I hadn't felt for a long time. So I started asking some of the locals, where is this cave in Delphi? And person after person after person was saying, there is no cave. And I'm like, yes, there is. And they're like, no, there's not. And I was starting to get discouraged. I'm like, I've just traveled halfway across the world to find this cave, and everyone's telling me there's no cave. And I went back to my hotel and I was sitting in the lobby. And there was this lovely old lady just sitting there. And I looked at her and I said, do you happen to know anything about a cave in Delphi? And she looked at me and she said, why do you want to know? And I said, and I told her about my dream and I told her about my condition. And she just looked at me, and then she got up and she went to a drawer and opened a drawer, and I actually brought it with me today. I treasure this piece of paper. And she gave me a hand-drawn map of Delphi. And she then grabbed a red pen. I don't know if you can see, where is it? The zigzag lines over here. Yeah, going up. She drew those lines and she said, this is the trail to the cave. And where I was staying was down here, and Delphi's down here. And there's this massive mountain, and there's a cave there. But there's actually 3 caves. And she said, and as soon as I saw the map, I didn't even read it. I can't read it, it's in Greek. But I looked at it and I pointed. I said, that's it, that's the one. There was like every hair on my body stood up, and I just knew that was the cave. And I said, how far is that walk? And she said, it's 17.5 kilometers. And I'm like, I like a trek, I can do this, you know. So the next day I found the start of the track, and it was like a little goat trail. And I did about 2.5 kilometers, but I was falling and slipping and hurting myself, you know. And I'm like, oh, can I do this? You know, I'm not going to give up. So I went back and I actually found this woman, and I said, is there another way? And she basically said, if you can find someone that's prepared to drive you like around this mountain to a certain point, you can walk about 3.5 kilometers. And I thought, well, that's more doable. I can do this, you know. So the next morning I found a taxi driver that could speak a bit of English, and I did a deal that I needed someone to drive me to this particular point and then return 6 hours later and bring me back to my hotel. So even just doing all of that by myself, you know, I had to really think ahead, how am I going to do this? And I said, I will pay you when I get back to the hotel, you know. So there was a high trust component to this whole expedition. So he dropped me off, and then I set off on this track, and it was breathtaking. Like, I was so in the moment. It was a beautiful, warm morning, and I'm walking in amongst these huge trees, and you're up high, looking down on these beautiful country valleys everywhere. And I'm in bliss, looking at these beehives, and just every single step of the whole journey towards the cave was a little surreal. And just, I was so supremely in the moment. I wasn't thinking about what am I going to do when I get there? What's it going to be like? I was totally in the moment. So anyway, I get to the very last part of the trek, and all of a sudden I find myself standing at the entrance of a cave, and I'm going to show you the photo of the entrance in a little while. And that's when something occurred to me, where my brain caught up with this whole journey and said, what the hell am I doing here? Like, seriously. Like, my rational mind finally caught up on this whole thing. And I'm like, you know, why am I here? And then this voice inside said, go inside. And I'm like, okay, I'm going inside. I don't know what I'm going to get in there. So I go inside this entrance, which only looked quite small, and it revealed the most magnificent cave I've ever seen in my life. Not that I've been in a lot, but this was like magnificent. And there were some markings on the wall, and for me, I could tell it was ancient. And there's a labyrinth inside, and it was just massive. And I stood there, and every hair on my body stood up. And then this voice started speaking and said, I am here. I am here. And it repeated that about 4 times. And I was hearing it, but knowing it wasn't me saying that. And then the voice said, go to the back of the cave. And I'm thinking, I've got to climb over rocks and all sorts of things to go to the back. And like, why would I want to go to the back of the cave? Will there be any light? But anyway, I complied, but it wasn't even compliance. There was just something resonating in my heart and soul, just saying go, you know. So I did. I went to the back of the cave. And when you go right to the back, you can't see the entrance of the cave. So you can't see the light coming in from the front. And I'm actually going to show you a photo that I took from the back looking towards the front, and you'll get a sense of the size of this thing and the feeling that you get when you're there. Anyway, I got to the back, and all of a sudden, in the blackness, I started seeing rainbow lights everywhere, like vivid rainbow-coloured lights. And I'm like, how is this possible? Because it's black, like, how? And so I put my hands on my eyes to see if it made any difference, and it made no difference at all. I could still see the colour through my hands, like, it didn't make sense. And I was like, wow, this is weird and it's wonderful, you know, and it was just in awe. And I sat down and I thought, well, I'm just going to meditate for a while. I'm just going to sit. And this cave was so still and so quiet. And as I was breathing, I could feel the cave breathing with me, literally around my skin. Every time I breathed, I could just feel this movement of air around me. And I felt like I was being hugged with every breath. It was so weird. And I was meditating for just over an hour, I think it was. And then I opened my eyes and I just started talking out loud. I said, I've brought you a gift, because I'd brought a little amethyst gem with me that I was going to leave at the cave. And then all of a sudden I heard a voice, and this voice said, I want the green heart. And I said, what? Because I thought I was making it up. And then I heard it again. It said, I want the green heart. Now in my backpack, I had a big green opal crystal in the shape of a heart that I used to use for all of my meditation. And I'm like, no, you can't have that. That's my meditation crystal. And then I heard the voice again, this time quite assertively saying, I want the green heart. And I was like, really? So I got my phone, I put the torch on, grabbed this crystal out of my backpack, and I'm holding it in my hand and I'm shining my torch on it. And I'm thinking, why is this so difficult? Like, whatever this voice is asking for this. And I don't really want to surrender it. So I could feel this tearing of my own heart going, what is it about this attachment that I have to this thing that I can't give it up? And that went for about a minute where I argued with myself. And then something just went, you know what, fine, you can have it. And so then I went to put it down. And as I went to put it down, my arm was directed further down in the cave. And so I'm following my arm and I'm going, what's going on here? And before I could release it, it went down into this crevice, into a space that even if I wanted to retrieve it, I couldn't reach it. I couldn't get it back. And so now I started to feel a little bit frightened. I'm like, there's definitely an energy in here, and the sound of that stone going down was really loud and echoed, And I sat down and my heart was pounding like full on. So I put my hands on my heart and I actually said, I'm scared. And this voice said, there's no need to fear. We are here. And I just said out loud, I don't even want to know. I don't care who you are. I just don't want to be scared right now. And so I started, because I'm a meditation teacher, I know how to calm my nervous system down. So I started breathing in coherence to try to get myself to calm down and not be panicked about what just happened. And I calmed myself down and my hands landed on my knees, but in an upright position instead of on my knees like this as they normally sit. For some reason, they landed palms up. And there's a lot to that, which I teach when we go. And I'm sitting there in silence, in quiet, in calm now with my palms up. And all of a sudden, my hands start to tingle like pins and needles, but times 1,000, like full on. And then my body starts to tingle. And I'm breathing through it and I'm saying out loud, I don't understand what's happening right now, but I'm just going to say thank you, because if I say thank you, I'm not going to get scared. So I maintained a really, fairly deep, relaxed breath while whatever was happening in my body. And then after about 15 minutes, it's a long time, it stopped. And then I said out loud, so what was all that about? And this voice was communicating with me and I could hear it as clear as day. It was coming through my mind. It wasn't external to me, but I knew it wasn't my voice. And I said, so what was all that about? And this voice said, now your healing work begins. And I said, what do you mean? And this voice went on to describe, you now carry the light of the heart of all there is. And wherever you're called to go, you must take this light. And I said, I think you've got the wrong person because I don't do that sort of thing. And this voice had an answer for everything. And it basically said, it's not you needing to do anything. It's the resonance and the frequency that you now carry that you need to take wherever you're called to go. And that energy will do the healing, will do whatever's required. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And then I looked at my watch and I'd been there like over 3 hours. And I'm thinking, I've got to get back to this vehicle and I've got to meet this driver. And I said out loud, I need to go. I really didn't want to leave. It was the most incredible experience, And I got up, got my bag. I was about to exit. And as I was about to exit, the voice said, you are to return next year with a circle of 8. And I turned back to look at the rest of the cave. And something in me just went, done. And there was no question about it. And I walked out of that cave feeling so calm, blissful, but I felt different, And I started walking down the mountain. And as I'm walking, I start recording on my phone, explaining what this experience was like and what had happened. And I could hear myself talking, and I'm going, and then this happened, and then this happened. And I don't understand what that buzzing in my body was all about. And then I stopped myself mid-sentence, and I went, I think I've just received a whole body healing. And my body felt different. I felt different. And I'm like, I'm healed. I'm okay. Anyway, I raced back to the car. The car was there, so thankfully that worked. Got back to my hotel, and I found the woman that had told me about the cave, and I told her what happened, and she was like, she had tears coming down her face. She said, it's amazing. And I returned back to Australia, went to see all of my doctors that had been treating me, went back to the neurologist, and I told him what had happened. And they all took copious notes. I said, we need to repeat the tests. I want to know whether, I've been healed. Long story short, we did all of the tests, went into hospital for a day. They did the upside down, all that sort of stuff that they do to test for neurological disorder, and I passed with flying colours. I had been healed. And all of them, my main two doctors looked at me and said, we can't explain this. Whatever happened in that cave has healed you. And they don't like to say things like that, but they took all the notes. And one of them, believe it or not, my main GP is actually coming with me this year to the Delphi Cave Experience 2026. Which is just wonderful, because thinking that he might carry that energy in healing his patients is just the most uplifting thought that I can have about it. So I came back, my life was completely different. I was able to get on with my life, again. And then I got to work to attract the right 8 people to join me for the Delphi Cave Experience for 2025. And I want to tell you that story, but before I do, I'd like to show you a photo of the crystal and where it ended up in the cave. Would you like to see that? Yeah? All right. And I'd like to kind of ask, is there something that you're like, is there something stirring in you as you're hearing this story? Because that's what you're going to tune into. If you can feel something stirring in you, that's how you'll know if this is for you or not. Okay, because part of this journey is not simply about applying to come and pay for it. There'll be a 20-minute information call that I will do with everyone that wants to come along to make sure that there's a really good fit, that this is something that's going to add to you, your experience and what you're all about, and that the cave is there to really meet you there as well. So we want to make sure that it's right for you, and you can absolutely say no if it doesn't feel right for you, but you'll get more information in that information call with me. So let me go ahead and share this picture with you. Let me see. So this is my beautiful green crystal that I used to use for meditation, and this is where it ended up, in this crevice that was way too far away for me to be able to retrieve it. And what you'll see there too, I don't know if you can kind of make it out, even where it landed, it's got like a bit of a heart shape in that crevice. What else have I got here? And what I learned afterwards, because I meditate and I speak to Spirit all the time. I speak to God. And I said, so what was all that about? How did it come about? And what it said, the voice said to me was this: did she hear the call? Yes, she did. Did she answer the call? Yes, she did. Did she surrender the heart? Yes, she did. And they were the 3 tests. And until you do that and fully open to what's there for you, you will never know what's there for you. And it's kind of like, I was told they were the 3 tests. And, you know, the thing that came to me was, how many times had I heard a call to do something or to be somewhere or to, you know, call someone? And how many times did I actually follow that? And I think the universe is always trying to communicate with us, but do we actually heed the call, or do we rationalize it away sometimes because it's a silly idea? Like, seriously, who would get on a plane and go and find a cave? Well, I did. And I'm really grateful that I did, because it literally changed my life. So before I get into the story of 2025, I want to have a look at the chat box and see what people have written here. From my visit 50 years ago, when I think about traveling again, it was always back to Delphi. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So what's coming up for you as you're hearing my story? If you want to just chat, just write a word or 2 in the chat box. What are you feeling? What are you sensing? What are you tuning into? Memories from a past life there. Wow. You'll feel it. You'll absolutely feel it. And you'll also attune to it, because there's a full curriculum that I'll take people through as well if you decide to join me in Delphi. Paula is feeling awe and spiritual wonder. Yeah, absolutely. I could feel that. Mary, I had a remarkable experience, meditation, when I was taken to Delphi, and I found it to be properly healing. Yeah, feels so good to hear you. Oh, thank you, Mary. Same sort of things I felt when I was there. I consider myself a spiritual person, but I felt the power there. Absolutely. Tears and a sense of surrender. Absolutely, Laura. You know, and this is what I was feeling, and this is what the people that joined me last year felt. I'll show you a picture of the 8 people that came with me last year, and all of them, like, I literally put it on my website, and I thought, you know what, I'm not even going to market this, the right people will come. And they all came, and it was phenomenal. I didn't have to stress or, you know, go out and sell it, because this is something you can't sell. You either feel it and you resonate with it, or you don't. It won't work if it's just something you pay for and you just come and think, oh yeah, you know, this is like a full-on metaphysical experience that you connect with something bigger than you, and you heal parts of you, whether it's a spiritual healing where you're looking for purpose and meaning. And I'll tell you a story of one of the girls that came last year that alchemized her pain into purpose. Whether it's a physical healing that you're looking for, which is what I had as well, whether it's an emotional healing that you're looking for, and there's another lady that I'll tell you about that had a big one, or whether it's a mental healing where there's loops and patterns of behavior that are just keeping you stuck and suffering, and that you don't need to be in anymore. You know, in a place like Delphi, and doing something like the Delphi Cave Experience can be that pathway of transformation and transmutation into a whole new way of being. You know, kind of imagine carrying everything you're carrying in your life right now into Delphi and leaving a completely different person. And that's what happened to the 8 that came with me last year. And that's what happened to me the first time, and even last year, and I'll share that as well. What have I missed here? Pure magic, connection with Delphi, surprise. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Jill. A beautiful feeling. Robert, come with me, Robert. Wendy, I visited a cave with a local friend. Yeah, wow. You know, and the thing that was surprising is that you won't see this cave marketed and promoted publicly, and there's good reason for it. I've done a lot of research since then. It is a sacred cave, And what they don't want is for it to become another Camino trip that everybody wants to go and do because they want what she's having. It's not like that at all. What I've been told is that that cave was used for sacred teaching. It was where Dionysus held mystery schools in the day before the Romans came in and cleaned it all out. And I also help people travel in quantum. I do quantum journeys. And what I did last year when I took my group of 8, we actually had the red full moon while we were there, and we were up on top of the building that we were staying in, and I facilitated a journey for everybody to tap into the quantum field and tap into their higher selves and bring back a message for themselves in terms of what they needed in their lives. And with those journeys, I went on my own one while I was there, and I was shown a vision of how the cave used to be used. And what I saw was a vision of men and women dressed in long calico dresses in a circle. You'll see the size of the circle. It's massive. It's a massive cave, and they're all on the outside of the circle. There's burning fire light behind them, so they had plenty of light. And then on the ground, there were rows of people laying on the ground in this cave, and the people standing around in the circle all had their hands up facing the people who were on the ground, and they were actually performing healings in that cave. And the resonance of that healing energy is still in that cave. And that's what you feel when you walk in. And that's what I connected with straight away. It's pretty profound. So, are you ready to hear about 2025? So my 8 emerged pretty swiftly. Let me show you a photo of them, because I think it'll be nice if you can see who they are. And then I can tell you their story. There we go. Here we go. This is some various photos that I took within the cave. So the top left photo is looking back towards the entrance. The greeny one at the top middle center was taken in the middle, and you can see there's like this labyrinth right in the middle of the cave. Like it's massive. The other photos were all taken from the back on the right hand side. The bottom right photo is one of my favorite photos, where you can see, like, in the middle you can see 2 little humans around that labyrinth I was telling you about. That gives you an idea of how big this cave is. Those 2 little figures there. I'll try to make it bigger for you. There we go. They're people. That's how big this cave is. And you can see a little bit of the coloured light there on the top left of that photo. So let me show you this beautiful group of 8. Here they are, down here. There we go. So the first one to the left, let me tell you about Kim. So we've got all of them, 8. We've got Kim, we've got Marie, we've got Shelley, we've got Julie, we've got another Kim, we've got Mark, we've got Marilyn, and we've got Helen. And I'd like to tell you about, I can tell you about all of them, but maybe I'll give you the most profound thing that happened for each of them. The first one there on your left is Kim. Now, Kim came to the group with a significant mental health issue that she hadn't been able to shake for quite a lot of years. And she openly talks about this. And at the end of this webinar, I'm going to send you a couple of emails, and I'm going to share some of their stories in greater depth for you so that you can feel into them and connect, and you'll know if this is something you want to do for yourself. And Kim had tried a lot. She tried all sorts of therapies. She also had an addiction that she was trying to shake, and she'd been sober for quite a number of years, but still there was that energy of all of that was hanging over her. And so she really was looking for that zest for life and moving on from all of this stuff that she was still carrying. By the end of our time together, last year it was 10 days. This year's experience, I was told I have to do 11 days. So the journey this year starts, I'll tell you more about it at the end, but it's going to be 10 nights, 11 days. Anyway, by the end of this journey, Kim went into that cave with the hope of wanting to transcend all of those shadows that were plaguing her life. And at the end of the Delphi Cave Experience, this woman re-emerged with the most amazing light. Like, she was just smiling, she was filled with joy. And she said, I think I've got my life back again. And she can't stop smiling. And when you hear Kim's story, and I'll send it to you, you will hear the detail of what she's actually been through and what her experience was. But essentially, she is no longer in that dark space anymore. And she's been able to maintain and sustain that. And it's been a year now, almost. We have an advanced connection that we connect in with. So after the Delphi Cave Experience, our connection doesn't end there. There's a series of advanced immersion sessions that I do, and we're catching up as well. So, I think that we create and form a bond that it's difficult to undo once you connect the way you do when we go to Delphi. The next person there is Marie with the white shorts. Marie, her husband died tragically about 14 years ago, and she was still carrying a deep, deep grief and weight in her heart. And she found it really difficult to really embrace life without him in her life. And she wore a beautiful golden locket with his photo. It was always close to her heart. And when you go to the cave will ask you to surrender something, to give a gift, to offer a gift. And I will give everyone that comes a green heart, which you can either choose to keep or you can give to the cave. But in addition to that, because we go twice, not once, you can actually bring along something that you would like to offer as a gift to the cave, something meaningful to you. So anyway, when Marie went in the first time, she offered the green heart that I'd gifted everybody. And then when we went the second time, there were lots of tears for her. She really fell into the depths of her grief, and she came out of the cave the first time feeling like something had shifted, but there was still more. And she knew we were going a second time, and she said, right, I need to surrender more the second time. So there's more preparation that we do before a second visit, and I'll tell you a little bit about the curriculum as well. Marie went in the second time, and she actually surrendered the locket, and her husband spoke to her and said to her, sweetheart, the nature of our love is eternal. You don't need a locket around your neck binding you to me, because we're always here together in your heart. You don't need that anymore. So she surrendered that locket that she treasured for the last 14 years, and she came out of there going, wow, this weight had been taken off her heart entirely, and she's just filled with the joy knowing that he's with her always in a whole new way of understanding, appreciation and embodiment. And that's just been beautiful to witness. The next one there is Shelley with the light blue shirt. And you'll hear Shelley's story because I will share that with you. Shelley is a GP. She operates in the Northern Territory. A constant giver. She will work 16, 18-hour days. She loves helping people, but sometimes she doesn't have a stop to her help. She has no boundaries around it. So she was totally exhausted, and she got to a point where She wasn't actively suicidal, but she knew she didn't want life to continue the way it had been continuing. And so something profound had to shift. Anyway, you'll hear in her story that she actually connected with a couple of, I'll say entities, people. One was a dog that she loved forever. And basically what happened for her whole life now is on a whole new trajectory. She's in the process of transforming her practice into a like a respite healing center for animals. And she said she's always had this passion for healing, and she thought it was always about healing people, but she realizes there's nothing like that, like palliative care and caring for traumatized or wounded animals like that. And that's what she's going to be setting up. So she's in the process of doing that now, and it's just giving her a whole new purpose in life. And it's crazy. It's like you can't stop this woman now. It's wonderful. Then the next one there is Julie. Now, Julie came in with a big anxiety issue. Like every day was just filled with constant anxiety that she couldn't shake. And she tried a lot of different things. She's also a physio, and she tried medications as well, and nothing seemed to work. And somehow, going through the curriculum that we went through and her times in the cave, she's come out of that no anxiety, none at all. And the radiance of her smile is something just that lights up my heart. And you'll hear about Julie with one of the emails that I'll send you. The next one there with the white pants is Kim. Now, Kim is, by day, she's a property advisor, but then she's also got this passion for music. So she's an opera singer, but she doesn't like to share that gift openly without some form of, stage anxiety as well. She found her voice. She found her resonance. She sang in the cave. The resonance of her voice in that cave was remarkable. And she said, I've now found the voice of Creator through me, and there's nothing that's going to prevent me, being creatively expressed anymore. So she's totally been unleashed. Then you've got Mark. Mark is a businessman, owns 8 businesses across Australia. He's been married for 35 years and has, I can't remember how many grandchildren he has. And he was really going through a phase where he felt like life was feeling a little mundane, and he was in a bit of a rut, and he had fears that he had never confronted before. And in the quiet of the cave, he was able to sit with those fears and totally transcend them, totally transform his fears. And he walked out of that cave the second time fearless. And it's so much so because one of his fears was heights. And after he left Delphi, he went to Meteora and went and trekked even higher heights than where we go for this cave. And he said, I don't have any fear of heights anymore, and I don't fear the darkness anymore, which is just beautiful. Then we've got Marilyn. Marilyn works for government in a very senior role, and she was going through a period of just not feeling like her life was on track and wasn't really valuing herself enough. And by the end of the Delphi Cave Experience, Marilyn connected in with a deeper aspect of herself, that she really knows who she is, she knows her worth, she knows her values, and she's uncompromising now. And it's just brought out this beautiful, confident radiance that I'm very joyful about. And then you've got Helen, and Helen is a senior government executive as well. And she's also a carer for her mother. And again, Helen is a big giver, and she gives so much to so many people. Coming to Delphi was her way of giving to herself, and it was a total reset. So she's come back to life here now, where she has got healthy boundaries, and she's more consistently valuing that need to give within, to be able to give more to others around her. So that's a little bit about the group last year, and there might be something in all of that storytelling that connects with you in terms of the group. So the other two photos, oops, where did it go? That's the other, this one here is at the entrance of the cave going out. And then the bottom left photo is actually on top of the building where I do all of the lessons. So the morning sessions are done rooftop because it's actually really beautiful there. And then the afternoon sessions are done inside because it gets too hot outside. So let me just stop that. And these are just some of the quotes from 3 of the people there. So Kim, I experienced overwhelming joy, deep connection, unconditional love for myself and my fellow pilgrims. I never felt anything like it before. This was the opera singer. Marilyn, my worldview shifted completely. Where I once held scarcity, I now live in trust, abundance, and deep listening. And then Shelley, the doctor, before Delphi, I didn't want to be here anymore. Through this guidance, I rediscovered my purpose and my joy. So I'm just going to stop that share. So I'd love you to, if you feel a sense of curiosity, if there's something here that's resonating for you, and it just needs to be a curiosity, and you'd like to have that 20-minute call with you, I invite you to do that. I'm going to put in the chat box right now. Whoops, that didn't work. Let me just get it. I'm going to put the actual link if you would like to book a 20-minute call with me. You can go ahead and just copy that link. You can do it now if you want to, if you know you definitely want to come. I've got 5 spots left. I have 2 calls that are booked this week, and I have 2 other people that I'm also following up with for a second call. So not sure what's happening with those 4 spots. So I do have a few spots left. So if you know that there's curiosity for you, please go ahead and book that. Let's have a chat. Let's see if the fit is right for you. And remember, you can say no if it doesn't feel right for you as well. So go ahead and do that. So let me tell you some practical things about this journey. So we start on the 31st of August in Athens. We will meet in Athens, and we'll have an orientation that afternoon into the evening. Then the next morning on the 1st of September, we will head to Delphi. And that's where the curriculum begins. So I'll give you some orientation around Delphi. And then while we're there, we're going to study something called the 12 Universal Laws. So as I was preparing to take the group last year to Delphi, I was told that we had to go for 10 days, and there was something magical about the number 10. And I'm like, what are we going to do in 10 days, you know? And then I was told I had to teach the 12 Universal Laws, but it wasn't the theory of the 12 Universal Laws. It was the embodiment of the 12 Universal Laws. And what are they? You don't need to know what they are, but they're things like understanding that you're connected to everything, the law of vibration, that everything works in energy, and how to actually sense into that, attune into that, and understand it and trust it. And you will know how to do all of that by the time we finish our time together in Delphi. The law of inspired action, where you feel that call and you answer the call, and how to discern whether it's ego versus a real call. You'll learn all about that. The law of relativity, the law of polarity, the law of attraction is more than what you've been led to believe. That the way that you engage in life, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you behave, sets out an energy into the field that gets mirrored back to you. So what you're seeing out there is a reflection of what's in here. So if you want to change anything out there, it's got to start within. We do all that work, so you get to focus all on you for that full 11 days. And then we end up back in Athens. While we're in Delphi, we go twice to the cave. There's a day of integration in between. There'll be some free time as well, so there'll be plenty of time for you to have that inner reflection time. I will take you to sacred waters where you can just drink the most pure mountain water every day. And you'll feel the resonance of that water as well as you drink it. Day 11, we go back to Athens, and some people are going to continue on with me for 5 days to a little island for some integration work together. The rest of the group will go back to the airport and maybe do some extra travel. Some people have decided to travel before and then meet in Athens on the 31st. Other people are hooking on another trip after Delphi. So really up to you how you want to do that. Now, I'm going to tell you about a flash sale that I'm opening today because I knew I was doing this webinar with you. So today online, the sale price is, the normal price is normally Australian dollars, $13,999. Starting today for 10 days only, the price will be $9,999 Australian. That's less than 7,000, I think, US. I've got the numbers. But because you're here on this call, I'm going to stop the recording in a moment and I'm going to give you an extra special incentive to come and join me in Delphi. But I don't want to put that on the recording because you made the effort to be here. I want to make sure that you are acknowledged and rewarded for that. So before I do that, I just want you to just tune into what you've heard today and to connect in with what your body is saying to you, what that resonance is for you. And in just 1 or 2 words, I'd like you to just share, what have you got out of this webinar with me today? What are you taking away?